Let's get right into it. Number 10, the gong farmer. This job sounds innocent enough, like maybe you're farming some kind of exotic vegetable. Wrong. Gong farmers dug out and removed human excrement from privies and cesspits. Basically, they were professional poop shovelers. But here's the deadly part. In 1325, a medieval gong farmer named Richard the Raker was emptying his own personal cesspit when he accidentally fell in, drowning to death in his own gong. Imagine explaining that to St. Peter at the pearly gates. How did you die? Well, funny story. These guys could only work at night because the smell was so horrific that towns banned them during daylight hours. They were basically medieval vampires, except instead of blood, they dealt with something much worse. The methane gases from these cesspits could knock you unconscious, and falling into one meant certain death. Not exactly the farming career your parents envisioned. Number 9, leech collector. This sounds like maybe you're collecting cute little pond creatures for a nature preserve. Nope. Leech collectors would use their own legs, gathering the leech after it had finished sucking enough blood. These people literally used themselves as human bait for blood-sucking parasites. The job description was simple. Wade into swamps, let leeches attach to your legs, wait for them to get fat on your blood, then collect them for medical use. Many in the profession suffered from the effects of the loss of blood and infections spread by the leeches. You lose so much blood that you'd become anemic, weak, and eventually your immune system would collapse. Some collectors died from blood loss or the diseases these leeches carried. It was like voluntarily signing up to be a vampire's lunch every single day. Number 8, the sin eater. This job sounds spiritual and meaningful, like you're helping people find peace. The reality was much darker. When someone died, the sin eater would be called to literally eat the deceased person's sins. They'd place bread and ale on the corpse, then consume it, believing they were taking all the dead person's sins into their own soul. The community would pay them, but then immediately shun them because they were now carrying everyone else's spiritual baggage. These people lived as complete outcasts, slowly going insane from isolation and the psychological weight of believing they carried the sins of entire villages. Most died alone, abandoned, and convinced they were damned for eternity. The job didn't just kill your body, it destroyed your mind and soul. Number 7, the tanner. You might think this sounds like a nice outdoor job working with leather. But medieval tanning was a death sentence disguised as craftsmanship. Tanners had to soak animal hides in vats filled with urine, animal brains, and rotting organic matter for months. The ammonia fumes from urine could burn your lungs and blind you. But the real killer was the anthrax. Animals with anthrax looked fine on the outside, but their hides were loaded with deadly spores. Tanners constantly handled these infected materials with their bare hands. Anthrax would enter through tiny cuts, causing massive skin ulcers that spread throughout the body. Most tanners died within a few years, their skin rotting off while they were still alive. The smell was so bad that tanners had to live outside town limits, dying slow, agonizing deaths in isolation. Number 6, rat catcher. Sounds like pest control, right? Just a guy with some traps keeping the city clean. Medieval rat catchers used their bare hands to grab rats in sewers and basements. But here's what they didn't know. Those rats were carrying the bubonic plague. Rat catchers had the highest mortality rate of any profession during plague outbreaks. They'd crawl into dark spaces filled with infected fleas, breathing in plague bacteria all day long. Most rat catchers died within months of starting the job. The irony is that they thought they were protecting the city from disease, but they were actually the first to die from the very plague they were trying to prevent. They develop the characteristic black buboes, suffer through days of agony, then die knowing they caught the disease from the very creatures they were paid to eliminate. Number 3, barber. Wait, cutting hair is dangerous? Medieval barbers weren't just trimming beards. They were also surgeons, dentists, and doctors all rolled into one deadly package. With zero medical training, they'd perform amputations, tooth extractions, and bloodletting using the same rusty tools they used for haircuts. They'd slice open veins to balance your humors, often causing patients to bleed to death. When performing surgery, they had no concept of sterilization or anesthesia. Most of their patients died from infection or blood loss. But here's the twist. The barbers themselves frequently died too. They'd cut themselves on infected tools, contract diseases from patients, or get attacked by grieving family members when their treatments inevitably killed someone. Those red and white barber poles, they actually represent blood and bandages from all the botched surgeries. Number 4, the fuller. This job sounds wholesome. Someone who works with cloth and textiles. But fullers had to clean wool by stomping on it in vats filled with urine and clay.
The ammonia would eat away at their feet and legs, causing chronic infections. But the real danger was fuller's earth, a type of clay that contained naturally occurring asbestos. Fullers would breathe in these fibers for years, slowly destroying their lungs. They would develop a medieval version of mesothelioma, gasping for air as their lungs turned to stone. Most fullers died in their 30s, coughing up blood and struggling to breathe. The irony is that they were making beautiful, clean cloth while their own bodies were being slowly poisoned from the inside out. Number 2, plague barrier. During the Black Death, someone had to dispose of all those corpses. Plague barriers would collect the dead, load them onto carts, and dump them into mass graves. They had constant contact with plague victims and no protective equipment. Most plague barriers lasted about 2 weeks before becoming corpses themselves. They knew it was a death sentence, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Towns would pay huge sums to anyone willing to do the job because they knew they were basically paying for someone's funeral in advance. Some plague barriers tried to protect themselves by getting drunk before work, thinking alcohol would kill the disease. All it did was make them more careless around infected bodies, guaranteeing faster transmission. They would develop the characteristic black buboes, suffer through days of agony, then die knowing they caught the disease from the very creatures they were paid to eliminate. Number 2, the cook's assistant in a castle. This sounds safe, just helping prepare meals in a nice kitchen. But castle kitchens were death traps. They were filled with massive open fires, boiling oil, and sharp knives everywhere. But the real danger was food poisoning. Without refrigeration, meat would spoil quickly, and cook's assistants had to taste everything to check if it was safe for the nobles. They were basically human poison detectors. When food was contaminated, the assistant would get violently ill or die, and the noble would simply get a new assistant. Many assistants died from ergot poisoning from moldy grain, which caused hallucinations, gangrene, and death. Others died from lead poisoning from the pewter cookware. Castle kitchens had such high turnover that they went through assistants like paper towels. Number 1, mercury miner. This sounds like just another mining job, maybe digging up that shiny liquid metal for mirrors and medicine. Medieval mercury miners worked in tunnels filled with mercury vapor, not knowing they were breathing in one of the most toxic substances on Earth. Mercury attacks your nervous system, causing your hands to shake uncontrollably, your teeth to fall out, and your personality to completely change. The phrase "mad as a hatter" came from hat makers who used mercury, but mercury miners had it much worse. They'd start hallucinating, become violently aggressive, then eventually slip into a coma and die. The terrifying part is that mercury poisoning was irreversible. Once those vapors entered your system, you were doomed. Most mercury miners died within a year, spending their final months as trembling, delusional shells of their former selves. They would literally lose their minds while their bodies slowly shut down, all for a few coins to feed their families. Medieval people took these jobs not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. It was either risk death at work or guaranteed death from starvation. These weren't careers, they were elaborate suicide missions disguised as honest labor. Makes your Monday morning complaints seem pretty trivial, doesn't it?